Here we go. And we're now joined by Steve Perrault, co-host of Section 10 podcast, along with Jared Carabas and Coley Mick. Also works with Bleacher Report as well. So you've definitely seen him around the internet at some point. So Steve, thanks for coming on. Thanks for taking the time to join me.
Yeah, I'm excited. Let's do this.
All right, let's do it. So first of all, obviously, how things been going with this now almost year-long apocalypse that we've been in.
I mean, it's tricky because especially for the podcast, especially for Section
Yeah.
10, because early on we're like, all right, what are we gonna do? Like this is a whole new animal we've never had to deal with. And so it turned into doing the roundtable shows and having as many guests on. We are on a good flow there. It was like a guest a week. And before you knew it, it was like, all right, not that bad. And then all of a sudden it's like, okay, we still don't have baseball. So
Yeah.
I don't know how we're going to keep doing this. But finally they come back in late June, July. And they were terrible. So that's all I'm hoping for this year. It sounds like we're getting a 162 game season. I'm just hoping that we have a team that's fun to watch. That's it.
Exactly. That's all you can ask for, honestly, after what happened last year. It was
I
terrible.
know. That was just such a nightmare.
But how weird was that for you guys? Because, as a podcast, you guys are used to doing like the dugout interviews. You guys do the live shows and all that stuff. I mean, it's definitely weird for you guys with all the content that you're putting out. It's usually getting, in-person interviews and all that kind of stuff. So that had to be difficult.
It changed the game. I think the one good thing, or one of few good things that we can take from the pandemic, is that we all kind of sort of know how to do Zoom now. Like, I think we were just starting to use Zoom to our advantage right before the pandemic happened. Like, we were getting used to it to do out of town interviews. We understand not everybody could be in the Barstool studio, or that we could, get access to them in the dugout. So we figured out how to do Zoom, how to get, good at it. I learned how to edit the promos off of that. And it's just nice that like everyone else seemingly knows how to do this now, because even though this seems like something that's simple, it's not. Like, a lot of people, myself included, when we start these, it's always on the wrong settings. And I'm
Right.
trying to get my mic plugged in, and like the headphones, the Bluetooth to connect and everything. And it's kind of a pain in the ass. And you would think that guys that are so good, right? They are the top of the line at a sport, at a skill, but that does not mean they know how to use a laptop, or that any of them even have laptops. That's the thing that actually blew my mind in all this. All these guys are doing this like on their phone or on like an iPad or something. Like, they don't, a lot of them don't even have laptops. I'm like, what are you? Like,
They
who
probably
are
can't
you?
afford them.
Yeah, obviously they don't make enough coin, and we make the big bucks. But
Exactly.
no, that's one thing that I think that we're gonna take from this and benefit from moving forward. But the tough thing, just being honest, is like we don't know, we have no idea when that's gonna be. Like, I hate, and I'm sure I'm not the only one on the planet, but I hate not being able to plan specific things for the podcast in terms of in-person interviews, live shows, all that stuff. We had so much planned before this hit in the start of 2020, and yeah, it all got derailed. So it's really just about learning how to adapt and adjust on the fly, and it hasn't been easy, but I think we've done a solid job.
But for you, I mean, as a baseball guy, obviously not being able to go to Fenway last year and, just kind of mingle with the Section 10 fans and all that, and being able to travel, going to different ballparks. I mean, it just sucked.
That's the toughest part. That is the toughest part, because I think one of the biggest differences between me and Jared and I think is the grammatically correct way to say it. I love, like, I'm obsessed with interacting with people that listen to the show, because I'm always trying to pick their brains on like, all right, what can we get better at? What do you like? What do you need more of? Like, how do you think that interview went? I'm just a very social person. I like interacting with people, finding out their favorite Red Sox moments, all that type of stuff. I don't know if Jared loves that as much. He definitely enjoys, meeting people that listen to the show, but I'm all about yucking it up with them. Like, I love
Yeah.
like having a beer, trying to figure out, what we can do moving forward to make the show better. And that's just my favorite thing ever. And to completely just remove that is the worst. Like,
Yeah.
last season, not only was the team just trash, but not being able to go to I still was in the area a decent amount. I'm not gonna lie. Like,
Yeah.
like my girlfriend and I would still like go down there, and they had one place you could go without feeling guilty or anything was a parking lot right behind the Green Monster, right behind Lansdowne. And it's been there forever. It's been there since the Home Run Derby in 99. And they turned it into like an outdoor bar area. And so everyone's super spread out. They had like margaritas going and whatnot. And I'm like, you know what? This is probably as close as we're going to get in 2020 to being at the game. Like we're there while the game's going on. So you kind of hear the sounds, and that area is the best. I'm
Yeah.
obsessed with the Lansdowne area. Oh, it's so perfect. I don't want them to change any part of that. So from that perspective, I still got a little taste of it, but I miss it, man. I miss
Yeah.
being there, especially I was trying to, had really good momentum with the ballpark kicks thing in 2019. And, but ballpark kicks are useless if you can't go to the
Yeah,
ballpark.
right.
So
Exactly.
I had to completely just change the approach there. But yeah, no, I definitely miss being at Fenway,
Yeah.
and ideally in some capacity we can be there this year.
Yeah. That first Red Sox game will hit different when you can be
Oof.
back.
Oh, I don't even care. Like it doesn't. I don't even care if it's like me. I have my own section. I don't care. Like
Right.
being in there and watching a game is going to be incredible. I
Oh
literally
yeah.
can't wait. I can't wait when it's been like a week, and
Yeah,
and
right.
now we're looking at 2 years. So, yeah, just get us back there. That's all we need.
Exactly. So I like to usually go back, take it back. You were at Endicott when this all
Mhm.
first started for you. You had an internship at EEI. Was that right?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
So how did that
Yeah.
all? Because Endicott's a big. They're big into the internships, right? Because you do what, one a semester or one a year.
You do one a year. Yeah. So that's anytime I talk about Endicott, I honestly lead with that, where you'd be an idiot to not do an internship. At this point, I think you'd be a moron to not do internships when you're in college. You absolutely have to. Like, I almost think it's a requirement. And I was stunned when I was at Endicott. I'm like, wait, other schools don't require these? Like, I feel like that would make way more sense. So I don't know the exact stats now, but I remember back then they were one of the only schools. I graduated in 2012. They were one of the only schools that had a requirement for 3 internships while you're a student at the college over the course of your 4 years. So freshman year, a lot of pressure, like freshman year of college. Like what's your situation? Where do you go to school? Where are you going to school?
I went to Merrimack, so not
Okay.
too
Oh,
far from,
dude,
yeah,
Merrimack, great school.
yeah,
So I looked at Merrimack. Merrimack's awesome. So it's just funny because freshman year you're so nervous. You're like, I'm gonna mess up. I've never been on my own. Mom's not making me mac and cheese anymore. Like
yeah,
you don't know how you're gonna adapt. And then pretty early on, you got to start looking for that internship because they were always over winter break. So we had a longer winter break that basically went from week before Christmas all the way kind of towards the end of January. Right around now, like this would have been like the first week that we were like back in school, first or second week we were back in school. So you didn't have a ton of time after September to like lock down an internship. And luckily, my dad knew a guy that was at WEEI. Who then put me in touch. It's always like the guy knows the guy, and he puts you in touch
yeah.
with the guy, and that's kind of how it worked. And this guy Mike Saya, kind of hired me as an intern or gave me the position, and it was an interesting experience because you do a lot of the crap work. You really just do a bunch of garbage. Like early on, it was me calling all the prize winners and like letting them know that congratulations, you won like a Red Sox bobblehead. It's really
Right.
just had to get an address that you can like ship it to, and I'm like, God, if this is the whole internship, I'm gonna hate this. But it then transitioned. They noticed, all right, he's good at that. We'll give him some more responsibilities. And my favorite thing, without a doubt, was being like taking the calls and working in the producer studio for the Planet Mikey show with Mikey Adams. I have no idea what Mikey Adams is doing now, but at the time that was a big show, and it was like EEI's main night show. And so I would screen the calls, put him in there, and he'd occasionally have me on. I'll never forget my last day of the internship. He had me on for like the whole show, and we were just shooting the breeze the whole time. And I was like, "This is so cool." He called me Nedley Van Scooterhausen because he didn't know what my real name was, and so I just kind of ran with that. My grandmother had a field day with that. I was like, "Hey, Nedley," I'm like, "Nana, we're not doing this. We're not taking this home. All right, this is staying in the studio." But no, it was a ton of fun, and I think from there, it's like the internships you got were so important because I had buddies that had crap internships that were at like places that had nothing to do with their major. Most of us are sport management majors. I had a minor in communications. And after that, it was a sophomore year internship at Boston College, which I wish I put more effort into, man, like in terms of finding that internship, because I was basically a janitor at their like rec facility for the whole month of January in '09. I'm like, this sucks. So junior year you have off. I was lucky enough to travel to Madrid. And that was time of my life. And senior year was a semester long freelance at Comcast Sportsnet, which is now NBC Sports Boston. And I got the most hands-on experience there. It was cutting highlights. You have to do the logging and everything and, write down all the plays and all that. But it was super cool because you prompt the shows, you're in the studio, you're in the production room while the shows are going on. You get to learn what TV is all about. And then that kind of prepared me for the gig at NESN for about 3 years there as a production assistant. And then, Section 10 was after that. So it's been a hell of a journey so far, but I definitely I was so nervous before that EEI internship that first day. Like I had a tie on and everything. And the guy's like, dude, you don't have to wear a tie. You're good. Everyone there is basically just business casual. Like it's not, we're talking about the WEEI. Like this isn't like, some financial district area, but ton of fun. And I'm super thankful I got to have that to start the journey.
Yeah, definitely. I was actually at Comcast myself my senior year.
Okay.
I was there too. Yeah, it was really great. Definitely a great experience for sure. And
you get to do a lot of stuff. You get a lot of hands-on stuff. Yeah,
you do. It was great. So then you got the job at NESN, and when I was doing research before here, I thought that I saw that you talked to Andy Brickley. Was that it, or is that how you kind of got the whole?
That's you did good homework there. That was impressive. That's funny actually because my mom's hairdresser, her name is Tracy. She then cut my hair and it was solid, but I'm not gonna lie. Complete side note: I miss my guy Arthur. I lived in New York City for 5 years working at Bleacher Report, or 4 years basically until the pandemic hit, and I've been back home since then. But oh God, it's best haircuts ever. I miss that guy. But at the time, this lady, shout out Arthur. But at the time, this lady, Tracy, was cutting my hair, and my mom's hair. And she was talking with my mom about like, at the time, it didn't seem like things were going to work out at NESN. Or not at NESN, with I wasn't going to be extended with the freelance for Comcast. So it was like, okay, I got to find out what my real job's going to be, because like that extended a little past college, but it wasn't going to be like a full-time thing. I'm like, what am I going to do? I was hoping I was just going to stay. Honestly, I was like, can I just stay at Comcast forever? Like, I didn't know. Once you get your foot in the door there, you're like, I kind of just want to not do anything else. Like, this is cool enough. But you don't get that. And all of a sudden I'm like, what's the next step going to be? And my mom's hairdresser was like, I cut Andy Brickley's hair and I could put a good word in for you if you want me to. And she's like, yeah, that would be great. So that leads to this, we set up this little, and not even an interview, just a meet and greet with me and Andy, just to kind of, talk about NESN and all that. And he was at a Dunkin' Donuts. He shows up an hour early. So my mom drives by the Dunkin' Donuts, sees Andy there, texts me frantically, like, did you mess the time up? Like, Andy's already there, yada, yada, yada. And I'm losing my mind now. I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to get there. He's not going to be there. I'm going to blow my big chance. What am I doing? And luckily I get there. He's still there. As you would expect, Andy Brickley. He's got leg crossed. He's got a paper route. He's got a donut and a coffee. And it's just like, this guy is so New England. He might as well have been in a Dunks commercial like right before then.
Right.
But no, we talked for like an hour, and I'll never forget it because it was just like a normal conversation. It wasn't like, so what do you think you can do at NESN, kiddo? Like, it was like a genuine, I'm picking his brain on Jack Edwards, on, what the job's like, on his experiences with the team, with the players. At that point, biggest guys on the team are Bergeron, Chara. I'm trying to Lucic. I mean, I'm trying to find out as much as I possibly can about the team and about what that job's like. And so he forwarded my name to Brian Zaccello. I call him Z. He's the producer of Bruins games for NESN, still is. And then we had our interview, and I crushed that interview and got the job as a production assistant for NESN. So I think that was like the biggest deal to me, because it's like, all right, like I'm out of college and I have like a real job at a place that I watched NESN growing up all the time, like Hazel May, Heidi Watney. Like, these are the people I watched host these morning shows, and now I'm there. So I was like, this is kind of nuts. So the experience at NESN was a whole nother deal in terms of what I expected.
Yeah.
But getting that job meant a lot to me, and it has, kind of changed the trajectory of my career. It's definitely sped all of this stuff up.
Yeah. What was that experience like for you though at NESN? I know PA, I mean, it's not really something that you can kind of climb the ladder, I guess, really. So it's kind of one of those things where you do it and then you kind of just see where it goes and see maybe can you squeeze yourself somewhere else. And yeah.
Yeah, it's production assistant. Like my favorite part of NESN, first off, is getting a ring. I got a World Series ring when they won in 2013 with my name on it,
There you
and it's
go.
like it's not the actual. It's like a JV version of it, but we're talking diamonds, we're talking sapphires, we're talking
Yeah.
like the real deal. So like it's got my name on it, and I can say years down the road I was a reliever for the team, and I just didn't get in any games. But yeah, that was the highlight for me. But in all honesty, you do literally everything, as you would probably imagine. You're doing highlights. You're logging a lot of the highlights, a lot of the games, so that they can go in and find all this footage when they're doing montages, when you're doing interview packages, all that stuff. I was working on basically every show at one point or another. NESN, I think it was NESN Sports Today was the name. Now they got NESN After Hours, my boy Emerson on there. And it was a lot, man. Like it was the worst part had to be working the Dennis and Callahan show. We did the simulcast on NESN, the TV version of it. And those guys are something else. Those guys are definitely something else. Kirk Minahan, he did not miss a chance to rip NESN on NESN's airwaves. I mean, I personally thought it was funny, but it's like, this is obviously NESN's going to be knocking on our door being like, what did he say? What did he say? To the point where I had to like log like every day. I had to like write down like the worst things Kirk said about NESN on our airwaves and give it to like the higher ups at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But I'll never forget. It was Halloween 2014 when it was the last day that they were airing Dennis and Callahan on NESN. And it basically had just become Kirk and Callahan at that point. And Kirk brought strippers into the studio. And I remember it like it was yesterday, because I'm back there with my friend Robin, and then my buddy Nigel is the producer. We're basically doing all the graphics and everything, and making sure we get in and out of commercials smooth, and all the odds and ends. Nigel sees the strippers walk in, and he just lets out this big like, "Oh my God!" And I was looking down, so I didn't really know what was going on. I looked up, and they're barely wearing anything, and because Kirk just wanted to cause mayhem, and because it was the last segment of the show,
Yeah.
and so he wanted to basically do an FU to NESN, and so what Nigel did, the producer did, he tried to basically like get the camera to go as far away from the strippers as possible, and so they realized that, and so they're adjusting, they're trying to like get back, and I'm like, this is the funniest piece of television I've ever seen in my life, but yeah, that was definitely a wild ride. And there were some people at NESN that I just straight up hated, and that I think were terrible at their jobs. And it was a lot of higher up people, some of the producers. And it is what it is. I mean, you're not going to see eye to eye with all these people. I just thought that they treated a lot of PAs like trash, and they still do. And the more I've been at Bleacher Report, the more I've experienced other jobs, you just don't get treated like that. Like you just don't get treated like you're the scum of the earth. And some of the producers and higher ups there consistently did that, and I thought that was just garbage. So it was what it was. We parted ways, didn't get my contract renewed, and in hindsight, it's the best thing that could have happened to me, because then if I stayed at NESN, I wouldn't have done Section 10. So yeah, it was a great experience, and I'm glad I got a ring out of it. That's
right.
Sure.
And then that brought you to Section 10. So where did you hear of that opportunity at first?
Yeah, it was Gary Streisky was my boy at NESN. He still is. Great dude. He's doing a lot of stuff for SportsCenter and SportsCenter Snapchat. But he was on the Section 10 podcast it would have been 2015. And he was the first guest on the show. I think the show started in March, maybe February of like 2015, because I joined in May. I think I joined a couple months after they started. And so Gary was the first guest, and I saw he retweeted the show. I think he retweeted Jared. I didn't know who Jared was at the time. And so I reach out, I try to find a way to reach out to Jared. He had his DMs closed, which is rare, very rare for Jared to have the DMs closed. Always open. And so I was like, all right, I got to find a way. I just knew it's weird, because when I heard the show, because I saw Gary retweet it, I listened. And when I heard, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to the Section 10 podcast, I was like, holy hell, they got the PA guy to do the intro of the show, and they're only on episode 10. That's nuts. Like this is a something. I knew Pete, actually. Pete and I went to Endicott together. Jared went to Endicott too. He did night classes, but Pete and I were the first students to start up sports radio shows at Endicott's campus. So I was doing a baseball show with my buddy at Endicott. He was doing a hockey show with his friend Andrew Pizzelli, who I became friends with. And so we knew each other from school. We had a couple classes together. So I wouldn't say we were like close friends by any means, but we knew each other from Endicott. And so I reached out to Jared. And I really milked the whole that we're all Endicott gulls. I really milked the gull thing. And I was like, from one gull to another, like, I really think I'd be a great fit on this show as a producer. And he was like, sure enough, we're looking for a producer. We're looking for someone to fill that role. And if you can fill it, that would be great. And so I show up that next week to Pete's mom's house, which is in, I think, Waltham. That's where he was living at the time. And I get to the door, and it was one of the weirdest experiences of my life, because I didn't know they were having this guy Thrill Ride be the guest that day. Thrill Ride's a big like wrestler guy. He's kind of a nut. And so so I get to the door. His dogs are going nuts. His dogs are barking their head off. And that's right when Thrill Ride like gets out of his car. And I'm like, am I about to like kind of sort of get killed here? What's going on? What's going on right now? I'm pretty sure it's the worst decision of my life. And then luckily Pete opens the door, and I'm like, oh, okay. And he's like, hey, I should have mentioned this guy's the guest on the show today. I'm like, all right, yeah, you probably should have mentioned, because he looked like he was about to kill me. But yeah, we do the first show, at least that I was producer. And then as time kind of went on, I talked more on the show, got more involved with the show, wasn't just doing the editing. And I kind of became the second voice in the show. And I think Pete would even tell you that. It's tough from Pete's perspective, because I think him and Jared started a good show, like really had good chemistry. But as time went on, Pete obviously did more hockey stuff. And
Right.
so he was doing that, and it was becoming his profession. And he was now writing for CBS Sports about hockey and like on their air. And it's like, at that point, he figured, okay, Steve's very clearly becoming the number 2 on the show. And there'd be shows where Jared and I show up, we got a bunch of notes ready to go, and Pete hadn't even watched the games the last week and a half. And it's like, come on now, Pete, come on now.
Yeah.
So, the show ends up, we're doing tons of shows. We're having a bunch of Boston sports personalities coming into Pete's mom's basement, which is where we recorded. And that was the crazy part. Kirk Minahan came down there, Jimmy Stewart, Jim Murray, a couple of the writers. I don't know if Drellick ever came down there, Evan Drellick, that slimy Evan Drellick. But that was probably the funniest thing to me, is that they were coming down there, and it was like, all right, we got something. If they're willing to like come here, like we definitely got something going on here. So I end up moving to New York for the Bleacher Report job. And then all of a sudden we're doing it more remotely. And so it's more on Google Hangouts. And finally, Barstool moves to New York in 2017, a couple years later. And Jared moves to New York. And then all of a sudden we're doing it in studio. And I'm like, this is kind of nuts. Like now because over that time, over that first year and a half or so, that's when we were acquired by Barstool. It wasn't like we were just a Barstool podcast the whole time. So then we're doing it in studio in 2017. 2018 comes around. I know Feidelberg had his brief stint on the show for a little bit there, and it didn't really work out. It was no one's fault really, but he was just so committed to KFC radio that it was just kind of hard to balance. And then Coley joins around the start of 2018, and all of a sudden it's like technically that was the crossover of like me, Jared, and Pete were still doing the show. Feidelberg was doing the show. Coley was all of a sudden, so we got 5 people on the show. Like, what are we doing here? So Pete, it was like a lengthy text. We had a lengthy thread, and he was like, you know what? I think it's just best that I kind of step away here, that you guys do your thing. Because we were having him call in via Skype, and it was just choppy when everyone's in the studio, and then you got one person on Skype. So Pete's done great things since then. He's dominating his thing. He's the biggest hockey guy, I think, on Twitter. So he's doing his thing. He's crushing it. But I think it was the right decision, because it's kind of hard to balance all that stuff. And 2018 was magical, man. 2018 was absolutely incredible. It really just became me, Jared, and Coley doing the show. Feidelberg would hop on occasionally. I think back to 2018 every day.
What a year that was for you guys.
So incredible. The show just blew up. We were making new shirts every week, seeing a bunch of people out. We took a trip to DC for July 4th, Red Sox Nats. That was incredible. Remember, like, we recorded a show outside of Nats Park. It was so hot. And all of a sudden this guy comes up to us. He's like, oh, you guys do Section 10, right? I was like, yeah. This guy ended up being the bar owner of this really nice bar that's right on the water there. Nats Park is great, and it's on a great area. It's right by the harbor there, not far from like the Capitol building and all that. And he's like, between us, like the Stanley Cup's coming soon. If you guys want to like party with the Stanley Cup, we're
Oh
like,
shit.
yeah, let's do that. Why not? One of the Caps players, because they had just won the Cup
Yeah.
in June, they had won the Cup the month before, was like bringing it to this bar, and we were at this like private gathering and got to take pictures with it and everything. I was like, this is nuts. So that summer goes on. It was the greatest summer of all time, and the Red Sox cruised through the playoffs and everything was great. Obviously, my only critique's the duck boat thing. That's
Yeah.
always going to be my only critique there. But I've gotten more over it as time has passed. But yeah, talk about a magical year, man. I literally think about it every day. Like, especially during the pandemic. Like, there's all these anniversaries that come up of like, oh, this happened in 2018. I'm like, did it ever?
Yeah.
That was,
I mean,
it
it's
was
so
incredible.
crazy because I mean, like you said, you come from Pete's mom's basement, and then you get to 2018. I mean, you got people on Twitter tweeting at you with Section 10 T-shirts, sweatshirts,
Yeah.
whatever it is, and it's like they're all over the place from all over the country at all different ballparks.
I
And
know. Well, one of the crazy things, sorry to cut you off there, but like one of the
yeah,
crazy things with that was my family, we took a trip to Ireland at the end of July. And I'll never forget this. I had tweeted when I was in Ireland, I was like, this is going to be rough, but I'm still going to watch all the games. They start at midnight there. So it's a 5-hour difference.
yeah,
So I'll never forget the amount of DMs I got. And I know, oh, I got a bunch of DMs. I'll never forget all the people that are Section 10 listeners in Ireland trying to meet up and like, yo, let's get a drink in Dublin. Let's get a drink in like, Dunkirk, like whatever. I forget Dunkirk and like Kirkland or whatever, like
yeah.
all these places in Ireland. And I was like, this is nuts. Like, this is absolutely nuts. We got these people in Ireland that are like, yo, we got to meet up for a drink. Love Section 10. I'm like, what the hell is going on here? Like, that's because just the year before in 2017 was the first time we even sold shirts. It was the first time I saw a shirt at Fenway. I'll never forget. Someone took a picture of the Red Sox Astros series 2017 playoffs. Someone took a picture of someone in a Section 10 shirt on the big screen. And I was like, I in a weird way, I'm like, we made it. We got, someone in a shirt that's like getting acknowledged on the big screen. And then fast forward, like not even a year later, and you got people in Ireland, like, let's grab a drink. I'm like, this is crazy. But yeah, what a magical year. And I wouldn't trade it for anything.
Man, and then those dugout interviews started. You you've interviewed Cora, you've interviewed all these guys. What was that experience like for you? Being on the field, being in the dugout, and being able to interview all these Red Sox players.
Yeah, the big three there for September. That was in September of 2018. Because Jared had been working his ass off for years to get a credential, and that was kind of the base of all of this being able to happen. So he finally gets a credential. I'm sure there's some clowns and Boston sports media that did not like that.
Yeah.
Pete Abe, obviously,
Pete Abe, yeah.
but so he gets the credential. We then I meet Kevin Gregg, who's like the head of PR at the Red Sox, still is. And so he's like, all right, Steve's, he's fine. Like, he can also join you in the dugout for these interviews. So I was like, all right, thank God, that's awesome. So it starts with the Cora interview. I think it was like the second week of September. I'm like, first off, this is incredible. Cause like that summer was so magical and like everything went perfectly. And then all of a sudden I'm like, we're in the dugout, dude. And they just like let us chill there. Like the players were walking by, giving head nods and whatnot, going out for BP. I'm like, what the hell kind of life am I living here? But Cora interview was great. Mitch Moreland, we did the week after that. Tim Wakefield the week after that. And then all of a sudden it's around playoff time. And I'm like, do you think we're going to get access? I know like they probably don't want to be having us in the dugout during the playoffs. And luckily we kind of finagled our way into being able to do the JD Martinez interview on workout day, the day before the Yankees Red Sox series started in Boston. And for as long as I live, that will forever be one of my favorite days of my life. It was just the coolest thing ever because we felt welcome there. Like we're in the dugout and it wasn't weird. Like the players knew who we were. We obviously know these guys well. JD wanted to come on. He wanted to go on Section 10. Like he gave us 50 minutes of his time. It was incredible. And I'm just kind of pinching myself during the interview. I'm like, the biggest game of this guy's entire life is tomorrow.
Yeah.
And we're talking about, a weird exchange he had with a fan at Dunkin' Donuts. And it's like, this is nuts. So I got to go back. I haven't listened to that interview since, not for any reason. It's just, because I always have this mindset we're still doing stuff and still building and all that. Sometimes you do need to kind of look back at what you've done. But that was incredible. And that day was awesome. And I'll never forget the next night either. Game one was that atmosphere was nuts. Red Sox, Yankees playoffs. Finally, it'd been the first time in 14 years that had happened. and, going to baseball tavern afterwards, of course, like that was a big reason why 2018 was incredible too. The whole
Yeah.
tavern atmosphere was awesome. So yeah, those moments are irreplaceable for me. And that's the kind of stuff that I'm super proud of, because we had to work our asses off to get to that point. It's not like we just got that, oh, you won these passes to the dugout. Like there was a lot of work that went into it.
Yeah, definitely. And I feel like you mentioned, those players like JD wanted to come on, and you've had good relationships with, Brock Holt, Alex Cora, Joe Kelly, you name it. And I just feel like they like it because you guys almost make it fun, where it's not like a normal like media interview where they sit down with
Yeah.
like the Globe or the Herald or whatever it is and do like a whole sit down. So, and I feel like you guys have connected not only with the players, but just with like the younger fans, because baseball is always that sport that's just starving for like the younger kids to get into it. And I feel like that's what you guys have kind of done. And that's what that following's just, skyrocketed.
Yeah, I think it's something that we try to capture every year. And for as long as I'm doing Section 10, as we're doing the podcast, like we want to keep building on that, and getting more kids into the game, getting more kids into the concept of doing their own podcast and trying to grow that and grow a following and all that. I'm all about everybody that's trying to make it in this, field, I guess you could say. But yeah, everything about 2018 was incredible. The access was awesome. I'll never forget that. It wasn't like any, God-given right that we got to do dugout interviews. So that was pretty sick. But the one thing, like, it's funny because like the only thing I think I'd tweak about that playoff run is that they would have clinched at home. Like it was all in New York. I was getting drinks with my buddies that I work with at BR. We had contemplated going to Game 4. Like, should we do this? I don't know. Like, because we were going to just get drinks at a bar and watch it. It's the 7th inning. Sox have the lead. And I'm like, you know what? I got to be there. I got to be there when they clinch. So I get an Uber, fly down to Yankee Stadium, and I almost got like arrested. Like I tried to like sneak in because there's people flooding out. At this point, it's like the bottom of the 8th inning. Yankee fans are like, we don't want to be here when the Red Sox are celebrating on our field. So I try to go in one way where people are coming out. I bump into this kid, and I mean kid. He couldn't have been any older than like 3. And the dad's like, "What are you doing, buddy? You want to fight or something, buddy?" And I'm like, I literally am. I'm like, oh my God, am I gonna get beaten up by this guy? So. And the security's like, sir. And I just book it. I just run out of there as fast as I can. And then if you go further down, there's almost like an open concourse area that they open the gates to when it's after like the 7th inning. So people that are leaving can leave. And so I kind of just slowly finagled my way in there and got to see them clinch in Yankee Stadium, which was awesome. I'll never forget that. But yeah, it's funny because I was weirdly rooting for them to kind of sort of lose in Game 5 in LA so that they'd win, because I was going to go to Game 6, so they'd win at home. Celebration would go into the streets, and then we go to baseball. That's the only thing I think we were stripped of, that postseason run. But what is what it is. I mean, that you sound like a loser if you're like, they won too easily, they won too quickly. Like that's kind of ridiculous. So I don't want to say that.
Man, but what a year that was for you guys and the team as well. Then you've had the whole Twitter exchange and the relationship with Garen Austin at NESN, which was hilarious. At first I thought it was legit, and then I realized I was like, all right, it's a joke, but it was funny. It's awesome. And the wouldn't want to cuff you and all that. It's just that was a great piece of content that you guys have had.
I know it was. It's interesting because I'm glad it didn't like go into 2020. I don't think my girlfriend would love it. We weren't dating at the time when the whole Garen Austin thing was going on, but so I look back on it, and it probably did, because to a lot of people they really thought we were dating. They genuinely thought that was a real thing, and I thought it was funny just because I had really dumped on her for like all of 2016 and 2017 and a lot of 2018. I was like, she's terrible at the job. I was really upset because they didn't bring Gary Streisky back. I thought they kind of screwed him over. He was doing a ton of shows for NESN, and I don't think he ever got the credit he deserved. And they kind of, they didn't treat him great. So I didn't love that. Garen takes the job. I think she wasn't great at it. She just really wasn't. I just think it took a lot of time for her to kind of get comfortable. And every time they threw down to her, I was just kind of cringing a little bit. And I'm just like, this is the Red Sox sideline gig. so many people would want this job.
Oh, yeah.
Like, this is one of the top regional sports network jobs in the country. And it bugged me. It bugged me that they kept having Garen do it. And so I was definitely too mean. That's for sure. And I think to the point where she was like, what's going on here? Like, this is ridiculous. Who is this kid? And so then 2019, we finally had like a drink at Tavern early in the season, at Baseball Tavern, and kind of, evened out any loose ends. And then the whole dating thing was, that was funny. that was funny. That was definitely a whole thing. But yeah, wouldn't want to cuff you. Will stay forever. That's not going anywhere. That's ending. Always
great ending.
I know.
For the podcast.
It's just, and it's also just funny. I always think of the people that are kind of newer to the show. That's what makes me laugh, because they're probably like, what wouldn't want to cuff you? What are you talking about? Because when I ever got that, somebody DM'd me that commercial. It was on YouTube, and someone sent it to me in 2017. And I was like, oh my God, this is gold. This is gold. Yeah. And I looked around Twitter. I think I checked Jared's page, checked Cole. It was like, I don't think anybody's got this. I'm pretty sure like I'm the only one that's got this. And so I remember tweeting it out, and the replies just went flooding in, because you got Garen in this little, mini skirt, and she's got the cuffs and everything, and it's wouldn't want to cuff you. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. This is the funniest thing I've ever seen. But yeah, that was fun while it lasted. I think it was a good bit. We had people convinced for a while there, but it made 2019 more enjoyable, because my goodness, that was not fun to follow that team. Looking back on it, obviously more fun than 2020, but last couple of years have been rough. That's for sure when it comes to the product on the field.
Yeah. And obviously some more recent news with the Red Sox is Dustin Pedroia announcing his retirement. Obviously, sad for Red Sox fans. And I mean, obviously we've been watching Pedroia for his entire career in Boston. So what was that, what's your kind of thoughts on the Pedroia retirement and just his career with Boston?
Yeah, we had just talked to Cora last week, and I really wanted to bring that up. I wanted to bring up, what do you think is going to happen with Petey? Obviously, Alex Cora knows Pedroia probably better than anybody, considering that Petey kind of took his job. Not really took his job, but it was more just a transition of here's second base.
Right.
And kind of almost raised him into that position. I think Alex Cora meant way more to Petey's career than a lot of people give him credit for. And so wanted to pick his brain on it. He didn't give any heads up. You'd probably think at that point he had a good inkling that Petey was going to retire, but he spoke super highly of him, saying that he's ready to be a dad. And I love that he had mentioned that Petey made rings for his 8-year-old sons when they won the championship a month ago. Like, that's funny. And that's exactly what you expect from Dustin Pedroia. Exactly. I expect nothing different from him. But yeah, I mean, you get to the point where it's like, there's not a lot of guys. Like, Petey was a rookie when I was in high school. And so that's it felt a little weird in terms of like, wow, that's kind of it for guys that I quote unquote like grew up with. Like, there's not any of them left. Xander Bogaerts is like the longest tenured player that in terms of, I don't like when tenured is considered when you were drafted. I counted of when you started your Red Sox career. So Jackie and Xander both started in 2013, but obviously Jackie, I don't think he's coming back. He's a free agent, but yeah, Pedroia meant everything to this team. I mean, he meant everything to the city. An enormous part of 2 World Series championship teams. You can make the easy case they don't win either of them without Pedroia. And I think he should get his number retired. And we've been talking about this for a while. Honestly, something I want to do later this week is just look back at our promos on Pedroia. We've done so many Pedroia promos, just updates on his, on his knee and if he should have his number retired and all this stuff. And it's like, this guy won everything you can win. He won MVP, he won Rookie of the Year. He technically has 3 rings, Silver Sluggers, Gold Gloves, All-Star appearances. Like, I don't know what else Dustin Pedroia was supposed to do to get. And it's not like I'm saying he should be in Cooperstown. We're talking about the Red Sox and this ownership group retiring number 15. I don't think it's really asking that much. And yet, by some of the replies, my goodness, like, oh no, are you on drugs, dude? Like, what do you? They should retire his number. He did so much for this team, and without him, you probably only have 2 titles this century and not 4. Yeah. So it just seems easy, but I understand on Twitter, you're going to have people that just want to be like, you're such an idiot. You've always been an idiot. But yeah, I think it's an easy choice. Yeah. There are a lot of people that are like, I've heard this and I'm like, easy there, Bronco. They're like, obviously a Hall of Famer. I'm like, what? Come on.
Yeah.
I don't think he played long enough and did Hall of Fame level stuff. But I think it's pretty easily retired. That's kind of where I land.
Exactly. And then lastly, I wanted to just touch on the Baseball Hall of Fame thing with no players getting in. And then you got that jackass on Twitter tweeting out his empty ballot that he submitted.
That guy stinks. Rob Gillies or whatever his name is. That it's so funny when because the second I saw it, I was like, I gotta quote tweet it. And then right after that, I'm like, you know what? Because like my tweet's starting to get some likes and comments and stuff. I'm like, he's gonna delete. I know he's gonna delete it because that's the kind of wuss move that you expect from a guy that's gonna post empty ballot GIF.
Exactly.
The second they announce the Hall of Fame has no people in it to be like, look at me, I'm the reason why. Like, you stink, and no one wants anything to do with you. But yeah, the Schilling stuff is complicated for me because he's invited us into his home twice. We've done two great podcasts there. And he's treated us great. When he gets talking baseball, I think he's second to none in terms of how entertaining he can be. So that's tough. He meant a lot to 04, meant a lot to 07. And, put up, I think, Hall of Fame numbers more in the second half of his career, obviously, than the first. But who cares? I think we had someone call into the show with I'm doing with Bradford now and say that he shouldn't be in the Hall of Fame because he wasn't doing it from the start to the finish. And it's like, well, that's stupid. He played 17 seasons or so. Like he was in the bigs. It might not have been that much, but he was in the bigs for a long time and a dominant pitcher for the vast majority of those years. Won World Series MVP, 3 rings. He's in the Cy Young discussion basically every year. Like, come on. I don't know. He's the most clutch postseason pitcher ever. So I don't know why there wouldn't be a space for that guy in the Hall of Fame, but it's unfortunate because very clearly with him being 16 votes shy, pretty damn obvious it's because of what he's done off the field that he's not in the Hall of Fame and that he wasn't in the Hall of Fame 5 years ago. Yeah. So that sucks, honestly, because it's like you just wish that didn't happen and you want to be able to tell him maybe just, you keep that in the drafts. Yeah. Maybe don't send that one out, but we'll see. We'll see if he gets in next year. I don't love that he said, take me off the ballot. Because now that that, I don't see how you get more votes when you say, take me off the ballot and they keep you on the ballot. I don't see how your vote totals go up. Yeah. So if someone has that algorithm, then definitely show it to me. But I'm telling you, it's always, if he didn't do this, if he didn't say this, then he'd be in. If he didn't do that, he'd be in. And it's like, again, Kurt, if you didn't do the, I don't want these loser writers to vote me in. I'd rather the players, then the writers probably would have voted you in next year. So
exactly.
It's every move he can make to keep him off. He's done, which is kind of impressive. You almost have to tip your cap. It's very consistently keeping himself out of the Hall of Fame, which is hard to do. So
seems that's where he wants to be. So yeah. Well, hey Steve, man, I really appreciate you joining us tonight. And I know you're pretty busy, obviously, with the podcast and everything like that. So definitely thank you for coming on, and look forward to maybe doing it again sometime.
Yeah, let's definitely do it when there's real games going on and hopefully a full season. Sox they're gonna make the playoffs. All right, let's close on that. Sox are making the playoffs, kid. All right.
All right, Steve, man. Thank you. Have a good night.
Yeah, you too. Take it easy, man.
All right. See ya.